and welcome to Season 5 of Teaching Matters, a podcast from the Psych Sessions Network. I'm Eric Landrum from Boise State University, one of Teaching Matters' 3 co-hosts. My other 2 co-hosts are Susan Nolan from Seton Hall University and Adeyinka Akinsealer-Smith from City College of New York. And we do say goodbye to another co-founder of this podcast, Asani Sewell, in episode 6 of this Season 5. These 10 episodes of Season 5 were recorded from July 2022 through March of 2023 and are released on 10 consecutive Saturdays in 2023, starting on March 18th and continuing through May 20th. Oh, the places we'll go. We'll open with a current discussion of AI and ChapGPT. Then we'll harken back to mid-2022, where we had multiple conversations with different members of the Society for Teaching of Psychology, that's STP, and different task force leaders about their work. We'll chat about career transitions and changes, one time generically and one time specifically, as podcast co-founder Asani Sewell joins us, sadly, for the last time, as a regular, and discusses her departure from the podcast. In the remaining episodes, we discuss other classic topics that are, yes, beyond teaching. How do we handle students and other professionals and how they address us? We talk about the rituals of higher education and how they relate to our regular daily lives, with special meaning for Eric. A discussion about the special skill of peer reviewing, and then a discussion about applying for honors and awards. Why it's good for you, your department, and why you should apply as a role model, even if you think you might not receive the award. It's all part of the knowledge and skills that psychology professionals need to know about, the stuff that we are not taught in graduate school. That is beyond teaching. Welcome to Season 5. Welcome back to another edition of Beyond Teaching. I am beyond thrilled to be joined here today by my 2 colleagues. I'm Eric Landrum from Boise State University, and I'll let my 2 colleagues introduce themselves.
Hello, I'm Yinka Akinsealer-Smith from the City College of New York, City University of New York, New York, New York.
And I'm Susan Nolan from Seton Hall University.
New York, New York. The city's so nice they named it twice.
Named it twice.
And I'm in New Jersey, which people in New York make fun of, but that's fine because we've got enough people.
Get enough people. So we're going to venture into something today that I think neither one of us are absolute experts in, but when has that ever stopped a college professor from talking about something? And that is at least what's going on now in the spring of 2013, the AI explosion or controversy related to ChatGPT, the generation of text, for college students and actually faculty member writing for that much. And I think we'll just kind of free form on this a little bit and see what people's thoughts, concerns, experiences are with it.
So I don't know a whole bunch. I only recently heard about it about maybe a month ago from a friend who is in a completely different field. And I was blown away. And I just started thinking, so what is this really? What does it mean in terms of what I have to look for in terms of my student papers? What does it mean in terms of what people are writing? When people give talks, like they just go and they pull up stuff and then they just regurgitate, ethics, in terms of plagiarism. How does this all shake down?
Yeah, I think, go ahead.
No, go ahead, Eric.
What little I know about it, heard about it, and read about it, I think professors who are concerned about it are going to have to rely on their learning management systems, whether your Canvas or Blackboard uses Turnitin or R Original or whatever the the cheating detection, plagiarism detection system du jour is at your campus. I think most of us are going to hope those catch up with the new technology. Cheating for time immemorial has always been a threat to higher ed. A student turns in a Microsoft Word paper or a PDF text. Um, there's always been an interest in knowing did that student do their own work. There are ways that professors can structure assignments uh, to make it harder for students to cheat. It's usually more work for the instructor and for the student, by the way. Um, so, so I think the Chat GPT is a real threat. I've seen a couple of examples where Chat GPT has been asked to answer questions that are factual in nature and got some of the details absolutely wrong. So I
Mm.
think students need to be careful in over relying on this. I think we're still in the early stages of what's going to happen here. Um, and it's going to be interesting. I've seen reports of faculty members using it. Um, you could have Chat GPT search for curriculum committee policies of 10 institutions in your state and generate a new one for an 11th institution. And it can do that. And it's not necessarily plagiarizing, but it's generating text. The one last thing I'll say is that I heard a podcast the other day um, that talked about Bing. So the search at Microsoft Bing, which is a search engine that I've always thought was atrocious. Well, Microsoft has added in a layer of Bing. It's just in beta testing right now, where a Chat GPT offshoot AI algorithm, whatever, when you ask it a question, it'll give an answer, but it's based on this Chat GPT type of response. It just gives you a paragraph. It doesn't give you hyperlinks. It gives you a real answer as if a human were talking to you without any options, without any hyperlinks, without telling you where it got the information, but it tells you an answer to your question, which is really kind of cool and kind of creepy.
Mm.
Yeah, I mean, I would just add that Vanderbilt University got in trouble recently because they put out a statement related to diversity in the wake of some incidents that had occurred, and they basically admitted at the end, paraphrased from ChatGPT, which, from an ethical standpoint, I think if you're admitting it, if you have ChatGPT started out and then you paraphrase it to be what you want it to say and you admit it, I don't think that's unethical. I do think they can get criticized for wasn't this important enough to write it from scratch. Um, but I think it's something we're going to have to teach our students because I'm reading about a lot of people in jobs who are saying, yeah, I had to write, some kind of a launch memo or something, and I couldn't even get started. So I did that. And I've heard several, not in the academic world, but I've heard of several in the news, people saying, yeah, it worked for this. And I had a starting point. A lot of people point out that if you do something academic, the citations and the references might be made up or they might be real, but out of context. So they're not very good at that right now, but they're going to get better. So maybe this is a contrary view, but I think we need to teach our students how to use it. So assignments that say, okay, I want you here in class to write a little paragraph so I can see you're not using ChatGPT about X. Now I want you to go home and have ChatGPT do it, compare it, critique ChatGPT, and give me the best version of everything.
Right.
Well,
And give credit where credit is due. Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead. You can.
right. No, I guess I was listening, thinking about what Susan was just saying, because this is a context I heard about it in, that this person again was in another field. It was a speech writer for, I'm not going to get into what, but had to give a few different speeches on the same topic. And it was a little too much to come up with things that were consistently different across the board. So that generated them for this individual. And yeah, I was pretty amazed.
Yeah. And it's just going to get better and better. I think, Susan, you're right. If we think of it as a tool and we teach our students and our colleagues to give credit where credit is due, and we use it as a tool to improve our writing, then I don't think there's a problem with it. If we use it as a tool and take credit for it as our original writing, then I think we run into problems. Yeah.
I also think about other things that have changed. Um, we use calculators. We use statistical software to do our stats. Um, I mean, yeah, what are things that we don't do ourselves anymore and nobody would be shocked? We don't write in cursive anymore. So
Yeah,
no,
this one's a little bit
it's
different because cursive and calculators are only tools that spit out images where there's no right or wrong possible. If you enter the wrong data in a calculator, it's going to spit out wrong. But ChatGPT, you can put in right and you can spit out wrong.
which is why that needs to be a skill. How do we use ChatGPT to get right?
But
Right, and also I'm just thinking also too about, people using their own creative writing thought process, as opposed to relying on something else to spit out what you think the professor wants, or I don't
Mhm.
know, the
yeah,
publication wants. Where are you in all this? Where's your originality and your creativity in all of this?
one of the examples I saw, someone posted on the Site Teacher listserv, something about they had asked ChatGPT to comment on scales that are available to measure anxiety and depression. Okay, they asked ChatGPT, and ChatGPT sput. I don't know.
That
Generated um, some scales that seemed reasonable, but I will tell you that it also described the scales on a 0 to 4 scale, Likert type scale, from not at all to somewhat. And I can tell you, as a psychometric geek, that's not a Likert type scale. And I knew it right away when I was reading it. The scale might be appropriate to measure depression, but ChatGPT's description of Likert type was absolutely wrong. So anybody who knew the scaling literature uh, knew that a piece of it was incorrect, although the overall recommendation might have been good.
Well, which is why we still need education, because if
Mhm.
you just decide not to get educated and just learn how to read, then you are going to just buy everything ChatGPT says.
Right.
So I think there are information literacy skills. A, you have to know enough about a field to be able to do what you did, Eric. And B, you need to know how to suss out the correct information. How do you find this peer reviewed journal article that's being referenced by ChatGPT so you can see if it makes sense? But it is going to get better and better and better.
Yeah.
So we need to think about how we're assigning what we're assigning to our students, because they are going to use ChatGPT. And I think initially there are some, I haven't tried them yet, but there are apparently some like turn it in, but for ChatGPT that can say with some degree, some percentage
Mm.
likelihood of it being done by ChatGPT. But it's going to keep getting better and better until it gets to the point where you can't even tell. Like Photoshop, we used to be able to tell. Now you can't even tell.
Yeah. And Susan, this really kind of goes to some things that you've been talking about in your invited addresses and talks for quite some time, that these literacy skills about being able to disentangle fake news from real news, not necessarily fake websites, but websites,
Sketchy.
that are somewhat illegitimate.
Yeah.
This is just kind of another one of these threats, or the skill to detect is another skill. It kind of goes along with things that you've been talking about for quite some time.
Yeah. I wasn't prescient enough to add this to my list of things we need to do. But the minute this popped up, it's part of it. It's absolutely part of it.
Yeah,
And and I'm not. I think I'm a contrary voice, but I'm I'm not afraid of it. I think it's a really cool, and I think we're going to have to do some writing in our classrooms with old fashioned pen and paper to make sure our students, because I think you still do need to write in order to at least help you recognize good writing. But I don't think we're
Mm.
going to need the same degree of writing skills in our society in 10 years as we used to.
well, for me, I don't know if I'm afraid of it or not. I don't think I know enough about it to know. maybe I'm just too ignorant right now about it to know I should be fearful or not fearful. For me, I reverse engineer it. What are our employers going to want from our psychology
Yes.
graduates?
Yes.
And do our employers want our graduates to be able to write originally from their heads from scratch about whatever? Or do they want them to be able to create text, original, create text? If they want our graduates to create text, then ChatGPT is going to be a great tool because creating text that you use all the tools available to you. If they have to create text originally from their head without any aids, that's a different skill set. So
So
to me, you have to reverse engineer.
what jobs, Eric, do you think are going to continue to insist that people generate text originally?
Well, I think the journalism type jobs, anything journalism, web types of web editors, journalism types of things. But
I agree with journalism. I'm not
yeah,
sure people who are creating websites. I really think almost everybody else.
web text. Yeah. But, I think academics are going to have to be super careful. I mean, if
Sure.
I'm submitting for a journal to teaching of psychology or psychology learning and teaching, scholarship of teaching and learning and psychology, the big three in my world, um, there's probably going to be a checkbox pretty soon that says, I did not use, aid, or abet ChatGPT or other AI devices in the creation of the text for this paper. I'm probably going to attest that these are all my original words, thoughts, ideas.
And for an empirical paper, probably a lot of it wouldn't work anyway. I'm not going to be able to say to ChatGPT, please summarize my methods because I've got out.
Right. That's
So,
not how it works. Right.
But how many master's thesis students are going to be tempted?
But what percentage of the world, in terms of jobs, are journalists and academics?
No, I mean,
No, not a whole bunch.
less than 2%.
As you're saying that, I'm even thinking in terms of psychology, clinicians, you're not necessarily doing that. In fact, now with I'm just thinking about what we do at the hospital when we're, doing our electronic charts. You're checking off boxes.
Well, yeah, Yinka, would this work? What if you had all the items in a patient's chart or a client's chart, and you fed it to Chat GPT, and it generated some notes? Would you be okay with then having your grad student or your intern then going from that draft, double checking it and making it the actual notes?
But then, see, here's the problem for me is that as a clinician, you're using your clinical acumen. You're using it's not just going and because that sounds to me like just cutting and pasting in a way.
But I don't think
And
that's what the algorithms do.
So, Yinka, here's an example. So, for years, if you give someone an MMPI, you get the computer spits out text,
right,
based on their answers.
But then when you write up the report, that's not all you're taking into consideration. At least that's not all I take into consideration.
It's not all you're taking into consideration, but you often include that language in a report.
Yes, I could see you would, but then you would be taking that and crafting. Yeah. You'd be taking that piece and then drawing on other things to create your profile of the person, if you will. Because I'm even thinking about evaluations that I do now. Yeah, I mean, usually I do the whole hand scoring and putting together, but then I'm sitting back and I'm thinking about the whole person and then I'm writing about them as opposed to just generating something and saying to the court or to the judge, here you go.
But it would be fascinating to allow ChatGPT, Yinka, to have access to every report you've ever written with all the accompanying data, and then give it an original person with original data and see what ChatGPT would write about that data set of that original person that they had never been presented before and you had never met before, and see how close the algorithm and the AI could mimic your voice and your tone and writing a
I
report.
don't like this. I do not like this.
But you know
I
what
don't
else,
like
Yinka? But you could then take that. It would save you all this time, and you could take it, and then you Yinka, could then go in and change it to make it more of your voice, right? It doesn't have to be the end. But wouldn't
Yeah.
that be a great
It
time
could be the
saver?
rough draft.
It could be the rough draft.
Yeah, I
mean,
have to think on this a
about
little bit more.
Isn't-
I have to think about this a little bit more.
Isn't there data out there that once the clinical decision making is known, that an algorithm makes the better
yeah,
clinical decision
yeah,
than the clinician does?
yes,
Mm.
and that's been true for years. In fact, I
Yeah.
heard a really
Robin
really
Dawes?
Robin Dawes. I heard a really great debate in oh gosh, years ago at an Eastern Psychological Association. They had Paul Meehl take that side
Paul Meehl,
and
yeah.
debated Malcolm Gladwell.
Oh,
Oh,
cool.
wow.
Who I'm rolling my eyes because he throws out the science so much for his bottom line. But he was arguing no, intuition is good, and it was really really funny because Paul Meehl killed it, and then I happened to bump into Malcolm Gladwell literally in my neighborhood at a cafe. I was on my way and he was on his way out. And I was like, oh, I just saw you do the debate. And he's like, oh, how did I do? I thought, you could tell he was like nervous about it. And I didn't have the heart to tell him like, yeah, no, you got killed. No, the algorithms, one of my rare celebrity sightings in New York. But no, he got killed because that is true. The algorithm is going to be better statistically. Yeah.
The fallibility of human
Gosh.
Yeah.
behavior.
So
It's just
I
like
love what you
empires
suggested.
in the major leagues are being replaced one at a time. I mean, the electronic calling of balls and strikes is here.
Yeah. And the thing is that I love what you said, that Yinka will be able to take her confidential stuff and she'll have her own program. And I could do the same. Like imagine when I was on the executive committee for the Society for the Teaching of Psychology and I had to do my annual report. I could give the annual report access to my folder that had all my STP stuff for my vice presidential role. And it would see my previous reports. It could write them for me. I mean, and I would just say, I use ChatGPT and then I paraphrase. I would just admit it. What's wrong with that?
I'm thinking about Yinka 2.0 right now.
But I think the thing is just piggybacking off what you're saying, Susan, it's one thing when you're upfront that yes, you used it, as opposed to presenting as if it wasn't used.
I think that's the way to do it. I mean, I use poll everywhere in my classroom. And one of my reasons for doing that is that rather than try to come up with these ways, all right, students, put your phones away. I don't want you to be distracted by your phone. I know my students are going to be distracted by my phone. I'm going to make them use their phone in my class by using polling software on their smartphone. So I'm going to lean into it rather than make up these arcane rules to forbid it. And I think that's part of this conversation as well. We can come up with all kinds of rules and gatekeepers and fence posts to keep it out. Or at some point we can lean into it and say, all right, how can we leverage this and get our students ready for the real world as opposed to the fake artificial academic world?
So to borrow a phrase from DBT, dialectical behavioral therapy, radical acceptance.
Yes.
Oh my, well, all right. It makes me a little bit uncomfortable, but yeah, man, radical acceptance. I'm
Radical
going to have to
acceptance.
edit that part out.
Wait, but that's what you're saying. You know, lean into it. It's just like, okay, it is what it is.
Can I
It's gonna
say
happen.
eventual
can't
radical
fight it.
acceptance?
We're not going to be able to fight it. Our students are going to use it when they leave our classrooms. So why not teach
They
them how
are
to use
using it.
They are using it. Yes. Why
This
not
is what I
teach
have
them
to
how
look forward
use
to
it?
when I come back from sabbatical. This is what I have to look forward to in the fall.
Same.
I leave
I'm
for one academic year and the whole world changes on me.
Actually,
Yinka.
it would be really interesting. Am I correct in thinking that both of you have to write a sabbatical report when you return to your campuses?
Yes, I already wrote a mid-semester sabbatical report. Maybe I could let ChatGPT look at
And
that
that's
one.
where I was going. Have ChatGPT write both of your sabbatical reports. Lean into it, my
Well, the thing
colleagues.
is, no, but the thing is, I think that whatever you do needs to be done ethically. So if Seton Hall decides we can use ChatGPT for reports like that, if we admit it and then obviously paraphrase it, then sure, I'll start using ChatGPT for reports like that. Why not?
I guarantee the faculty will be ahead of the institution. Faculty
So
will start using it, admitting it, and then the institution 5 years later will come up with a policy that says you can or you can't.
now here's the place where I don't think I want to use ChatGPT, and this would be for textbook writing, because so much of what you decide to put in there is thinking about, because if ChatGPT is going to say, what do all the other books do? And just because it's there, it has to be there. And it'll just lead to expansion. I want to make my own decisions. Also, the writing for a report, like an executive committee report for STP or a sabbatical report, who cares if your writing is interesting and approachable? It's just a report. But if you're writing for, so I think it gets back to journalism. So far, I don't think a journalist who's writing for the New York Times or whatever, I don't think a textbook writer, I think for the most part, at least for now, our journal articles, I don't think these things can, and I don't think I'd want to for those areas. But for reports that are just boring, like who cares?
Yeah, somehow I think, and I haven't made this connection clear yet in my head, but I think using ChatGPT in textbook writing is somehow akin to OER. I don't know, I, there's some analogy in there that's imperfect,
Mm,
but OER, you can take it and then add your own stuff to it most of the time. An open resource, you can add it, make it your own, but yet give credit to the originator. So I don't know. I think there's some relationship in there I haven't completely worked out. Yeah.
yeah. But I mean, it's happening. So I think we have to embrace it and figure out, well, think about Google searches, what we don't have to have in our heads anymore because we can look it up.
Right.
So yeah,
I think we have to embrace it, or there's one other option.
move to a deserted island with no electronic hardware.
No, 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 no. Retire.
Which is like moving to the deserted
Okay.
island.
Yeah,
Some of us go on sabbaticals. Some of us think about retirement.
but stick around anyway.
Not for long.
I didn't hear that.
That's what the NFL stands for. Not for long.
So I think because we've got some episodes ready to release, I think this is going to be the first of them because this is going to change so fast. So I think we need to front load this episode in our next series that goes out because this is going to change so fast. And then in a few months, I think we should revisit and see if because I'm not teaching this semester like Yinka. So when I get back into my classroom in the fall, all the people who are teaching are just like laughing, like Susan thinks this is a good idea. She has no idea she's going to be in for a rude awakening. So that might
So
be
you mean
the
the
case.
podcast Beyond Teaching is about when 2 out of the 3 podcast hosts are beyond teaching, meaning they don't teach?
For
Is
a
that what the
year.
title means?
Well, yeah, exactly.
If you
Oh,
insist.
I'm glad I'm still back in the classroom. At least one of us is.
So you can tell us about your experiences with it then.
Maybe next time.
Lean into it. Radical acceptance.
Eventual radical acceptance. That's my modification.
Well, thank you for this conversation. I think
Yeah,
we're going to be having a lot of these conversations going forward as this technology improves.
Absolutely. Thank you.
for sure.